Humans have been finding ways to entertain themselves since the beginning of time. It's a huge part of our lifestyle. We pay up to $10 to go watch a movie on a big screen, binge seasons of our favorite shows until our eyes hurt, play video games instead of studying for exams. These forms of entertainment don't only give us a reason to wait until tomorrow to do that important essay, they impact the way we view things. But recently, a new controversial topic rises when it comes to representation on these platforms of entertainment. Queer representation. More specifically, LGBT representation. I'm not talking about the typical gay white man that loves theater or the GBF in a high school chick flick. I'm talking actual representation. Why does this matter, you ask? Well, if you're someone who's particularly straight, such an issue may not have crossed your mind, but that's what this video is for, so buckle your seatbelts and get ready to be informed. We have to admit, over the years there have been great strides toward acceptance, and just of June 26, 2015, gay marriage was legalized throughout all the states in the US, which is great. So why are we still talking about this? And that brings me back to why is representation so important? The fact is, the LGBT community deserves proper representation, just like anyone else. It's human dignity for actual people. Think of it this way. Back in the day, whitewashing was huge in Hollywood. Rarely people of color actually played roles in movies and shows, and instead were replaced by white people doing horrible and frankly offensive impressions. Even today, this is still a controversy. Though not nearly as bad as it was years ago, people of color are still fighting for major roles. Just take the Oscars of 2016, for example. The LGBT community is going through the same thing. Looking at this graph from the GLAAD, out of 815 series, 32 contain some sort of LGBT character. You might be thinking, well, there you go, 32, that's a good number. Well, one, no, frankly it isn't, and two, most of these characters still follow the typical stereotype, or are used for comic relief, or are said to be gay off-screen, and this is never shown in the show at all, which doesn't really help the situation. In this other graph showing studio releases, 85% are without LGBT inclusion, while only 17.5% are inclusive. And with that small percentage, 65% are gay men, 30% are bisexuals, 10% lesbians, and a whopping 0% are transgender people. Out of the 28 characters total, only 32% are female, while 68% are male, and don't even get me started on the lack of diversity in race. As you can see, the community is still struggling for some recognition, and transgender representation is virtually non-existent. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's focus on what we can do and why we need to do it. Let's start with another graphic from the GLAAD. The plan is to normalize LGBT situations and peoples. Like we've said before, these things are a huge part of our lives, and if these everyday characters are shown as normal people and that their struggles are real, it can lead to acceptance. And if it's looked at from a religious standpoint, in the New Testament, Jesus preaches love and acceptance. He was not judgmental and would support a cause that would bring a minority group closer to equality. The vices present? Greed. It's not your problem, so who cares? Sloth? No one wants to do anything, just wait until something happens by itself. It won't. Pride. You take this for granted, that you have representation and your existence is the norm. We need kindness, patience, humility, diligence. You need to step down from your high horse for just a second to notice that this affects people. It is very important for LGBT people to be able to identify with characters instead of having to beg for some sort of representation. Ashley Mardell, a YouTuber and active member of the LGBT community, puts it best in one of their videos.
To face my gay, when I must campaign and claw for media representation because every character in every book and every part and every play and every half-baked hero in Hollywood, unless explicitly written as the GBF, is straight. If you think my gay is in your face, you forget I can't turn on the radio, the TV, flip through a magazine without being battered by your orientation.
Let's entertain the arguments of the opposing side for just a moment. You might think, well, what about children's shows? Is that appropriate for a younger audience? I say that might be the most important place to start. It can combat ignorance at a young age, and children are not born prejudiced. That is something that they're taught. But that kind of content is inappropriate for kids. What? Hell, every other Disney movie ends with a marriage and a kiss. Why can we include all these things when it supports heteronormativity, but when we try to include gay characters, it's suddenly not appropriate? Since when is being gay not okay for kids? There are gay kids that would die to see a character they relate to, or to see two moms or two dads on a show and think, yeah, that happens, and it's okay. Now you might say, but what about the companies? They'll lose money. I think Disney can afford to make the first gay Disney princess. Disney has more money than they know what to do with, and a widely known company such as that can be so impactful. This is the perfect time to do it. We can't keep waiting for something to happen. And if you think making it so that straight isn't the default and having LGBT characters in movies and TV shows and video games is uncomfortable, you might be a little homophobic. It's just like saying, we can't have too many black people on that kid's show. It's inappropriate. Or why do there have to be so many people of color instead of an all-white cast? Stop pushing your race on us. That sounds ridiculous. You sound ridiculous. And if your religious views are motivating your state of mind, remember this. The purpose of a human is to live in loving relationship with God and find happiness. It's hard for these people to find happiness with lack of equality and the amount of hatred. Keep in mind, queer kids are 3 times as likely to complete suicide, 2 times as likely to be physically assaulted, 40% of homeless youth are gay, 64% of LGBT students don't feel safe in schools, and 1 in 12 trans people is murdered. There's an incredible lack of happiness in the community, and it needs to change. And it can start with you. Get out of that state of denial and mindset that it's not a big deal, and recognize the problem. Support representation. It matters. Well, that was a lot of information. Stay tuned next week when we talk about something else. In the meantime, enjoy your summer, and enjoy this video of a chameleon changing colors.